Imagine holding an ordinary Liberty 1 cent 1974 Lincoln penny in your hand and realizing that what most people view as everyday pocket change could actually be the key to unlocking a hidden treasure worth hundreds, or even thousands of dollars. You may think a penny is just a penny, but in the world of coin collecting, especially with coins struck decades ago, tiny imperfections, anomalies, and mint mistakes can transform a seemingly ordinary piece of metal into a highly sought-after collectible. The history of the 1974 Lincoln penny is not just about its face value, it's about history, manufacturing processes, human and machine errors, mint mark peculiarities, the evolution of coinage in the United States, and how subtle differences have driven collectors to pay far more than a penny for some of these coins. It's a tale that will change how you look at the spare change in your pocket, and might even lead you to examine your own coins more closely. The Lincoln Cent series was first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It marked a departure from the earlier Indian head cent design and was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure on the obverse. The design of the Lincoln penny in 1974 was the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the motto "I in God we trust" above, the word liberty to the left, and the date 1974 to the right. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 for the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, graced the coin with the words United States of America above and 1 cent below, with the motto E pluribus unum stretched across the top of the memorial. The design itself was deeply symbolic of American history and values, combining the image of one of its most revered presidents with architectural symbolism of unity and national memory. In 1974, the United States Mint struck millions of Lincoln pennies across multiple facilities. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins with no mint mark, the Denver Mint produced coins with a D mint mark beneath the date, and the San Francisco Mint produced proof coins with an S mint mark, specifically for collectors. The mintages for 1974 were immense. The Philadelphia Mint struck nearly 2.3 billion pennies, while Denver produced over 2 billion. These figures reflect the huge demand for pennies in circulation at that time, and because so many were made, the vast majority of 1974 Lincoln pennies are considered common today. Ordinary circulated examples are typically worth only their face value of 1 cent, or slightly more if found in unusually good condition. Despite the staggering numbers produced, even well-controlled and highly automated minting processes cannot eliminate all errors and anomalies. A small percentage of coins can escape quality control with manufacturing flaws that make them unique from the millions of other coins struck that year. These mint errors and varieties are what makes certain 1974 Lincoln cents attractive to collectors and what can cause their market values to climb above the ordinary. The differences that matter can be as dramatic as a coin that is missing half of its design because it was struck off-center, or as subtle as letters that appear duplicated due to a die anomaly. What unites these varieties is that they deviate from what the United States Mint intended to produce, and because they are rare relative to the bulk of regular production, collectors are willing to pay enthusiast prices for them. Before we examine the specific errors and varieties that make some 1974 pennies valuable, it helps to understand how coins are made. The minting process begins with the production of planchets, which are blank metal discs prepared from a strip of metal. These planchets are fed into coining presses where dies with engraved designs strike them with powerful force, impressing the obverse and reverse images simultaneously. Thousands of coins are produced each minute, and each step of the process must operate smoothly for the coins to be uniform and free of defects. But anywhere in this pipeline from blanking to striking something can go wrong. One of the most famous and widely collectible categories of errors among Lincoln pennies is known as double die obverse errors. This type of error is not the result of mishaps during striking, but originates during the die creation process. Dies are made by pressing a hub with the coin's design into the steel die surface. If the hub and die do not align perfectly during a secondary impression, the die can carry two slightly misaligned impressions of the design elements. Coins struck from such a die exhibit doubling on letters and numerals on the obverse, as if the elements were stamped twice or show ghostly shadows. On a 1974 Lincoln penny, this might be visible on Liberty, the date 1974, or even on parts of Lincoln's portrait. Such double die coins are relatively rare compared to normal production and hence command interest from collectors. Not all double dies are created equal. Some are subtle and only visible under magnification, while others are strong and dramatic enough to be seen with the naked eye. The value of a double die 1974 penny depends on the strength of the doubling, the coin's overall condition, and collector interest. In circulated grades, weak double die examples may only command modest premiums over face value. However, a clear and well-preserved double die penny in high grade, especially one that has been professionally certified and graded by services such as PCGS or NGC, can fetch significantly higher prices, sometimes dozens or even hundreds of dollars depending on market demand and the specific variety. Another type of error that can drastically increase value is the off-center strike. This happens when a planchet is not properly seated in the coining press before it is struck by the dies. If the planchet is misaligned, the resulting coin will have part of its design missing because the dies struck only a portion of it. These errors can range from only slightly off-center to extremely off-center, where a large percentage of the design is missing. The more dramatic and visually appealing the off-center strike, the greater the interest from collectors. A 1974 penny with a significant off-center error that still shows the date and mint mark clearly can sell for a substantial premium, often into the hundreds of dollars or more depending on degree of error and condition. Closely related to off-center strikes are other striking anomalies such as broad strikes and clipped planchets. A broad strike occurs when the collar die device that holds the planchet in place during striking fails to operate correctly, allowing the metal to spread outward beyond its usual boundaries before the design is impressed. This results in a coin that appears wider than normal with incomplete rims. Broad strike pennies are collectible because they are visually distinctive and a result of mechanical malfunction during striking. Clipped planchets, by contrast, are an error from an earlier stage in the process. If the blanking press that punches planchets from a metal strip overlaps during punching, a resulting blank may be missing a curved or straight section of metal. When such a blank is struck with a coin design, you see a coin that looks as if a bite has been taken out of it. The rarity and visual appeal of clipped planchets can drive their value well above face value, with the size and shape of the clip influencing the desirability. Another intriguing category of errors involves anomalies around the mint mark itself. In 1974, mint marks were still being applied to dies by hand in some cases, meaning a small letter, D for Denver or S for San Francisco, was punched into the die surface. If the mint mark is punched more than once or in slightly different positions, it can produce a repunched mint mark RPM. On coins struck from these dies, you might see overlapping or slightly shadowed mint mark impressions. Collectors who specialize in mint mark varieties often seek these out, and coins with distinct and easily visible RPMs can carry a higher market value than their non-error counterparts. Die wear and die cracks are another source of collectible varieties. Die cracks occur when a die begins to fracture under repeated stress from striking thousands of coins. These cracks transfer to the surface of the coins as raised lines or unusual features. On a 1974 Lincoln penny, a crack might appear as a raised ridge running across the field or through design elements. Some collectors pay special attention to such die characteristics because they document the life and wear of the die itself. When a die crack becomes substantial and pronounced, the resulting coins can be more valuable to collectors who appreciate die variety types. A particularly notable type of die crack that collectors search for is the so-called BIE error. This happens when a crack forms in the die between the letters B and E in Liberty, leaving a raised line that resembles an extra letter, I. While this error has appeared in various years of Lincoln penny production, it is one of those quirky anomalies that collectors enjoy spotting because of its distinctive appearance. While BI errors on common dates might sell for moderate premiums, in higher grades or on early strike coins, they can attract more substantial collector interest. Even small die clashes can add value. A die clash occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, causing the design elements of one side to imprint on the other die. When these clash dies strike subsequent planchets, faint impressions of reverse design elements can appear on the obverse and vice versa. Collectors of mint errors often prize coins with visible die clash marks because they are direct evidence of a specific malfunction in the minting process. The condition of a 1974 penny also plays a vital role in determining value. Coins in circulated condition are typically worn, with loss of original luster, rounded details, and surface marks from everyday use. These coins, even if they exhibit minor errors, are often worth only modest premiums over face value unless the error is exceptional. By contrast, uncirculated or mint state coins are those that have never been used in circulation and therefore retain sharp details and much of their original luster. These coins are graded on a scale from MS60 to MS70, with higher numbers indicating fewer imperfections. A mint state 1974 penny in high grade, especially one with original red color indicating little oxidation of the copper surface, can be much more valuable than a similar coin that has circulated for decades. Professional grading significantly impacts market value. When a coin is submitted to a professional grading service such as PCGS or NGC, it is evaluated by experts who assign it a grade and, if it is an error or variety, authentication. The coin is then encapsulated in a tamper-proof holder with its grade and identification. Collectors often prefer coins that have been certified because they offer assurance of authenticity and condition. As a result, certified high-grade error coins from 1974 can sell at auctions or through dealers for prices that far exceed those of uncertified pieces. It's important to recognize that while some error coins achieve high auction prices, many error coins trade hands for more modest sums. Value is a combination of rarity, demand, condition, and how dramatic or appealing the error is. A slight off-center strike missing only a few % of the design may be worth a few dollars. A double die with subtle doubling only visible under magnification might attract modest collector interest, whereas a dramatic double die with strong visible doubling and pristine surfaces can command much higher prices. The San Francisco proof coins of 1974 offer another dimension of collectability. Proof coins are specially struck for collectors using polished planchets and dies, often with multiple strikes to produce sharp details and mirrored fields. These coins were sold directly to collectors in sets and are generally higher quality than mass-produced business strike coins. Proof pennies from 1974 in high grade can be worth premiums above typical business strike coins simply due to their superior eye appeal and lower original mintage numbers. If a proof coin exhibits anomalies such as die breaks or accidental doubling, those factors can further raise its value among collectors. Over the decades, collectors and hobbyists have documented many of the known error types and varieties of 1974 pennies. Reference books, coin catalogs, and online databases list these varieties and provide examples of market prices based on grading service population reports and auction results. These guides help both novices and experienced collectors identify which 1974 pennies might be valuable and which are common. The process of learning to recognize varieties and errors is part of the excitement of numismatics, a hobby that transforms ordinary coins into fascinating historical artifacts and, occasionally, valuable collectibles. Because of the sheer number of 1974 Lincoln pennies produced, finding a valuable coin is statistically rare, but it's not impossible. Many collectors encourage people to check your change for older pennies because even ordinary circulation coins might hide something rare. With some basic tools, a magnifying glass, a good light source, and reference materials, coin enthusiasts can examine date digits, mint marks, design edges, and fields for anomalies that indicate an error coin. The modern market for collectible coins is driven by buyer interest, rarity, condition, and historical significance. Coins with dramatic errors, high grades, or distinctive varieties often perform well in auctions and dealer sales. Popularity among collectors can shift over time as new discoveries are made and market trends evolve. Certain types of errors, once considered obscure, can become highly sought after when examples are recognized and documented in reference works or chronicled in collector communities. While most circulated 1974 pennies remain worth just their face value, it's those coins that deviate from the norm that capture the attention and imagination of collectors. The thrill of discovery of finding a coin that breaks the mold, tells a story of a momentary anomaly in a massive production line, and holds value beyond its face value is what numismatics is all about. Whether it's a dramatically off-center strike, a bold double die, a clipped planchet, or a subtle repunched mint mark, these variations remind us that behind every coin is a process, a history, and sometimes, an unexpected treasure waiting to be found. So the next time you come across a 1974 Lincoln penny, take a closer look. Inspect the date, examine the mint mark, search for anomalies in the letters and numbers, and consider the rich history behind that tiny piece of metal. you just might be holding something far more interesting and valuable than you ever imagined. Imagine picking up a handful of loose change, flipping through the coins with casual curiosity, and suddenly one little copper penny catches your eye. It's dated 1981, and just beneath the date there's a small D indicating it was struck at the United States Mint in Denver. Most people see that coin and think it's worth exactly what is stamped on its face, 1 cent. But what if that humble little penny holds a story that could transform it into a collectible worth dollars, tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, or in rare cases even more? What if every minute detail on that small, everyday piece of metal could connect you to decades of American history, minting technology, striking errors, human and machine mistakes, and a world of numismatic value that far outstrips its face value? This is the fascinating journey of the Liberty 1 cent 1981 D Lincoln penny, an ordinary coin with extraordinary potential. The Lincoln Cent series began in 1909 as a tribute to Abraham Lincoln on the 100th anniversary of his birth. It was a groundbreaking design at the time, as it was the first United States coin to feature a real historical figure rather than classical symbolism or allegory. The obverse shows President Lincoln in profile facing right, with the inscriptions "I in God We Trust" across the top rim, Liberty to the left of his profile, and the date to the right. The reverse design that appeared on 1981 pennies was introduced in 1959 and features the Lincoln Memorial, a powerful architectural tribute to Lincoln's legacy of unity and freedom. Across the top rim are the words United States of America, across the bottom is the denomination 1 cent, and just above the memorial is E Pluribus Unum. By 1981, the Lincoln Cent had become one of the most widely circulated and recognized coins in American currency. That year the Denver Mint struck billions of these pennies, each one with a small D mint mark just beneath the date on the obverse to denote its place of origin. In that era the composition of Lincoln cents was 95% copper with 5% zinc, a formula used from the early 1960s through 1982, before rising metal costs forced the mint to switch to a primarily zinc core with a thin copper plating beginning in mid-1982. As a result, 1981 pennies have heavier copper content than later issues and are often more visually attractive with their warm reddish surfaces when uncirculated. In everyday circulation, most 1981 D Lincoln pennies are worth face value. They pass through register transactions, pocket change, coin jars, parking meters, vending machines, and countless hands for decades. A typical worn example seen in circulation may show smoothing on Lincoln's cheek, fading of the hair details, dull and muted fields where the luster has worn away, and general signs of age and wear. These coins are still accepted in commerce at 1 cent, and for most people that's all they are, pocket change. But for those who study coin mintages and their varieties and who pay attention to the anomalies that occur during the minting process, there is a world of value hidden in tiny details that most people overlook. At its most basic level, the value of any coin, including the 1981 D Lincoln penny, is tied to a combination of rarity, demand, and condition. A common coin that was minted in large numbers with no discernible errors and with lots of surviving examples in all grades usually trades near its face value. That is exactly the case for the vast majority of 1981 D pennies. With billions struck, normal business strike specimens with ordinary wear are abundant. High-grade circulated examples that show moderate wear are slightly collectible to date and mint specialists, but still often only command a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition and eye appeal. Yet as common as these coins are in quantity, the minting process that produced them was not perfect. Every coin is produced through a series of steps involving planchet preparation, die manufacturing, and high-speed striking equipment. Somewhere early in the process, flat metal discs called planchets are cut from coils of metal. These planchets are cleaned, conditioned, and then fed into coining presses where a pair of engraved dies simultaneously strike the obverse and reverse designs into the blank metal. Under ideal conditions, this process yields millions of identical coins with precise alignment, clear details, and consistent metal flow. But perfection isn't ideal. In practice, tiny variations occur. A planchet may not be positioned correctly when struck. A die may crack under repeated use. A die may be improperly prepared with slightly misaligned design elements. A mint mark may be punched onto a die more than once or in the wrong position. These subtle shifts machine misfeeds, Human workarounds, microscopic slips are the things that turn an ordinary coin into an error coin. Error coins are pieces that deviate from what the mint intended to produce, and because those deviations happen infrequently relative to regular production, they tend to be scarce. Scarcity drives collector interest, and collector interest creates market value above face value. One of the most dramatic and valuable categories of error on Lincoln pennies is the doubled die variety. A doubled die error occurs not when the coin is struck, but earlier when the die itself is manufactured. Dies are produced by impressing a hub that contains the design into softer die steel to transfer the design. If the die receives more than one impression from the hub, and if the impressions are slightly misaligned, the die surface ends up with doubled images of the design elements. When such a die is used to strike coins, those coins exhibit doubling on features like the date, letters and liberty, and even portions of Lincoln's profile. What makes doubled die errors intriguing is their visibility. Some doubled dies are subtle and require magnification to notice, while others are bold and instantly noticeable to the naked eye. On a 1981 D Lincoln penny with a strong doubled die obverse, you might see doubling in the numbers 1981 themselves, with ghost-like shadows trailing each numeral, or you might see letters and liberty appearing thicker or with parallel outlines. The more pronounced the doubling and the better the overall condition of the coin, the more collectors are willing to pay for it. In many cases, strong doubled die 1981 D pennies that are certified by professional grading services have sold for prices far above what a similar date and mint struck without error would fetch. Another category of error that can add significant value is the off-center strike. This happens when the planchet is not properly centered in the coining press before it is struck. The result is that part of the design is missing on one or both sides of the coin. Off-center errors can be very minor, only a few % of the design missing, or they can be quite dramatic with half the design absent. Collectors tend to prize coins with significant off-center strikes, particularly when the date and mint mark are still visible on the portion of the coin that was struck. The scale of the off-center error directly influences value. Slight off-center coins may only be worth a few dollars, but significant misalignments where Lincoln's bust or the memorial is cut off can be worth many times face value. Closely related to off-center errors are broad strike and clipped planchet errors. Broad strike errors occur when the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking fails to function. In such cases, the metal spreads outward before the design is impressed, resulting in a coin that appears wider and flatter with incomplete rims. A broad strike penny stands out visually because it lacks the crisp outline and edge that every normal coin has. These coins may be sought by error collectors who delight in striking abnormalities. Clipped planchet errors originate in the blanking stage rather than the striking stage of production. If the planchet punching machine overlaps one blank with another while cutting from the metal strip, a resulting planchet may be missing a curved or even a straight portion of metal. When such a blank is struck with the coin design, the missing segment remains, giving the appearance of a coin with part of its edge bitten off. Some clipped planchet pennies have attractive curved clips that almost look intentional, and when combined with a well-preserved strike and visible date, these coins can be collectible and command premiums above ordinary examples. Another intriguing class of collectible anomalies relates to the mint mark itself. In 1981, the Denver Mint applied a small D mint mark beneath the date on the obverse of the penny. In some cases, mint workers or machines applied the mint mark more than once or in slightly different positions on the die surface. These repunched mint mark or RPM varieties appear when coins are struck from dies that carry overlapping or doubled impressions of the mint mark. On an RPM example, you might see a small shadow or offset duplication of the D mint mark, and the stronger and clearer that overlap, the more likely collectors are to pay a premium for the variety. RPM coins are interesting because they reveal a moment of human interaction in the minting process. Unlike mechanical errors that happen entirely within machinery and happen without human involvement, mint mark errors often reflect the human touch in preparing dies. In addition to mint mark oddities, die cracks and die breaks produce collectible varieties. Dies, though hardened, are subject to stress and wear over thousands of strikes. Tiny fractures can form in the die steel, and as these cracks enlarge, metal flows into the cracks during striking, leaving raised lines or blobs on the coin surfaces that were struck by that die. These raised lines, irregular shapes, or unexpected ridges are evidence of the die's deterioration. Some die cracks are minor and add only modest premiums, but larger or more eye-catching cracks, particularly ones that run through design elements or create unusual raised areas, tend to draw collector interest. A classic example of a die crack variety that collectors look for on Lincoln cents is the so-called BI error, where a die crack between the letters B and E in Liberty leaves a raised bar that almost looks like a third letter I. While this specific variety is more widely known on older Lincoln cents from other years, similar die crack effects can occur on 1981 D pennies, and such varieties are part of why collectors enjoy studying these coins so closely. Value in the numismatic market is also driven by condition and eye appeal. Even a strong error will not command top prices if the coin is heavily worn or has surface damage. Coins are graded on their preservation, with uncirculated or mint state coins that have never been circulated typically commanding higher values than worn coins. Uncirculated examples that are bright, with original mint luster still intact, are more desirable to collectors because they present the best visual representation of the coin as it left the mint. When combined with a significant error or variety, high-grade uncirculated 1981 D pennies can fetch premiums above what lower-grade examples would attract. Professional grading services play an important role in the market. When a coin is submitted to a grading service, experts evaluate its condition, authenticity, and any error or variety present. They then encapsulate the coin in a protective holder with a grade and variety designation. Collector confidence grows when a coin has been authenticated and graded by a respected service because buyers know they are dealing with a verified specimen. As a result, certified coins often sell for higher prices than uncertified coins of similar condition and error type. Despite the large production numbers for the 1981 D Lincoln penny, valuable examples are rare. For every million ordinary pennies that circulated with no errors, there might be only a handful of interesting error coins. That rarity is what drives collector demand. Collectors often encourage everyday people to check your change for older pennies because even coins found in loose pocket change can occasionally be error coins or high-grade survivors that are worth more than they appear. With simple tools like a magnifying glass, good lighting, and some reference materials, it's possible even for beginners to begin identifying unusual features like off-center strikes, double design elements, clipped edges, or unusual mint mark impressions. The market for these coins moves through collectors, auctions, and dealer sales. Values for error coins can vary widely. A modest off-center error missing only a small percentage of the design might sell for modest sums above face value, while a dramatic error that is unmistakable and visually appealing can sell for a multiple of what a normal coin would fetch. Strong double-die coins certified in high grade might reach prices that make them highlights among Lincoln cent collectors. Coins with multiple error types, for example, a double die that is also off-center or a repunched mint mark combined with die cracks can be particularly desirable because they combine more than one anomaly. It's also worth understanding that numismatic values change over time with collector interest and market conditions. What is highly collectible and valuable today might shift as new varieties are discovered, collector interest evolves, and trends in coin collecting shift. For example, some varieties of Lincoln cents that were obscure a generation ago have become widely documented and sought after as collectors and hobbyists have built databases of varieties and shared knowledge through books, clubs, and online communities. As more examples are found and documented, certain error varieties become better known, and that visibility can drive both interest and price. Because of the enormous number of 1981 D pennies originally struck, the everyday coins in circulation today will still largely be worth 1 cent if they show no significant errors or if they are worn from use. Even uncirculated examples without special errors are typically only worth modest premiums, often in the range of a few dollars depending on grade. But the special cases, the error coins, are what elevate this date and mint mark into something more interesting. An off-center coin with dramatic misalignment might be worth many times its face value. A strong double die with clear distortion and good eye appeal could command premiums that surprise even seasoned collectors. Repunched mint marks and attractive die cracks, while often more modest in value than dramatic double dies or extreme misalignments, still offer a layer of richness to the collecting experience. What makes this story so compelling is that you don't need to have inherited a rare coin collection or stumbled onto a buried treasure trove to find something valuable. The possibility exists that a 1981 Lincoln penny tucked away in a jar of loose change, rolled up in a bank envelope, or stored with other coins from years past could be an unusual variety that collectors prize. The thrill of discovery of seeing a tiny anomaly with your own eyes, realizing that a coin differs from what 99.9% of similar coins look like, and understanding that you may be holding something rare is part of what makes coin collecting a lifelong passion for many people. From the everyday circulation worth of 1 cent to the extraordinary premiums that rare era coins can command, the journey of the 1981 Lincoln penny illustrates how even the most humble coins can have hidden value for those who know where to look. It's a coin that connects us to American history, industrial minting processes, human and machine imperfections, and the vibrant market of collectors who study, cherish, trade, and preserve these tiny pieces of metal that carry histories far beyond their face value. Whether you are a seasoned collector or someone simply intrigued by the thought that your loose change might be worth more than you expect, the Liberty 1 cent 1981 Lincoln penny is a remarkable example of how everyday currency can hold extraordinary potential. Imagine you reach into your pocket, pull out some loose change, and there it is, a small, humble copper penny dated 1982 with a tiny D beneath the date. To most people it's just 1 cent. But what if that ordinary little coin is actually a key to untold value and a fascinating journey through American minting history? What if that penny tucked away in a jar or forgotten in a drawer could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars because of tiny irregularities that slipped through during production at the United States Mint? Welcome to the history of the Liberty 1 cent 1982 Lincoln penny, a coin that embodies one of the most intriguing and complex years in modern U.S. numismatics, a year of composition transitions, multiple date varieties, and rare mint errors, all of which have created possibilities for serious value far beyond the 1 cent printed on its face. In everyday circulation, a 1982 Lincoln penny that shows signs of where Lincoln's profile has lost its crisp detail, the fields appear dull, and the letters have softened, is still worth its face value of 1 cent. That's because Denver's coin presses struck billions of these pennies that year, releasing them into commerce, and the vast majority of them are completely ordinary with no distinguishing characteristics. You can find these pennies in coin jars, cash registers, parking meters, vending machines, and anywhere that loose change is exchanged. Most are made of zinc with a thin copper plating and weigh about 2.5 grams, and if you're just looking at average circulated examples, even coins in above average condition are typically only worth slightly more than face value to collectors focused on date and mint sets. In average circulated grades, most 1982 pennies that bear no unusual features trade for just a few cents or perhaps a couple of dollars at most if they are in pleasing enough condition for someone completing a set. But this everyday face value experience only tells part of the story. The year 1982 was not an ordinary year in the history of United States pennies. It was a transition year in terms of metal composition for the Lincoln cent. Prior to 1982, pennies were struck primarily from a bronze alloy consisting of 95% copper and 5% zinc, and each coin weighed approximately 3.11 grams. Rising copper prices made that composition economically unsustainable, so beginning in mid-1982 the mint shifted to a zinc-based composition that weighed less and was more cost-effective, consisting of about 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating bond on the surface. The result is that 1982 became the only year in modern times in which Lincoln cents were struck in both copper and zinc alloys, and in both large date and small date varieties, creating 7 major planned varieties plus occasional transitional errors across all mints for that year. That composition change alone makes 1982 a rich subject of study. It means that you have to physically weigh a penny to tell whether it is copper or zinc, because visually they may look similar at first glance. The copper ones weigh around 3.11 grams and have a different feel and color depth, while the zinc ones come in at about 2.5 grams. And because the mint was shifting production processes mid-year, experiments, die changes, and planchet transitions sometimes overlapped or were misapplied, setting the stage for varieties and errors that are now considered rare collectibles. In the collector and numismatic community, the most famous and valuable of the 1982 penny varieties is the 1982 small date copper penny struck on a bronze planchet when it should have been zinc. This coin is exceptionally rare because it was produced in error during the compositional transition, and only 2 specimens have been widely recognized by collectors and grading services. These small-date copper coins from the Denver Mint are so scarce that circulated examples have sold in the high thousands and even above $10,000 at prominent auctions, with some sales reported between $8,500 and $18,800 depending on condition. That range makes these coins among the most valuable Lincoln cents of the modern era. To understand why this is valuable, you have to appreciate that most 1982 pennies produced at Denver were meant to be zinc. A rare mistake that applied a bronze planchet to the wrong production run is not merely an erosion of quality control, it is an accidental creation of a numismatic rarity. Collectors highly prize these transitional era coins because they combine extreme scarcity with a visible difference in composition, meaning they weigh noticeably more and have a deeper copper tone compared to typical zinc cents. It's one of the most sought-after varieties of any Lincoln cent issued in the 1980s. But the story doesn't end there. Even if your 1982 D penny is made of zinc, the far more common composition, it still has the potential to be a coin worth much more than 1 cent if it bears certain minting errors. One such type is the off-center strike, which occurs when a planchet is not properly seated in the coining press. In that case, the dies strike only a portion of the blank, leaving parts of the design missing or shifted. The value of an off-center coin depends on how much design is missing and whether key identifying details like the date and mint mark are still visible. Slightly off-center examples with only a small percentage missing might be worth tens of dollars to the right collector, while dramatic off-center strikes that show half or more of the coin's surface blank can sell for upwards of $100 or more. At a 2023 auction, for example, an extreme off-center 1982 zinc penny was reported to sell for over $500 in certified condition because nearly half the design was missing, yet the date remained legible, indicating both rarity and dramatic visual appeal. Closely related to off-center errors are broad strike errors, where the coin's metal spreads out unusually wide before being struck because the retaining collar that normally holds it in place failed. These coins appear noticeably bigger and flatter than standard pennies. A broad strike 1982 D penny in certified condition can sometimes command over $2,000 if the spread is dramatic and the coin retains good strike detail. Other broad strike pennies with moderate metal spread may be worth between $50 and a couple of $100, depending on eye appeal and the extent of the error. Another category that serious collectors watch for is clipped planchets. These occur when the blanking machine cuts an irregular planchet from the metal strip because the punch overlapped another blank or misfed the metal strip. The result is a coin that appears as though part of its edge has been bitten off. Depending on the size and placement of the clip and whether the date and mint mark remain visible, a clipped planchet can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to dozens of dollars or more. Clipped planchets on 1982 pennies are more often minor premiums, but extreme clips on well-preserved coins are still collectible. Yet another rich vein for 1982 penny collectors lies in die errors and doubling. A doubled die error occurs back at the die creation stage when the master hub impresses the design onto the working die more than once in slightly misaligned positions. When that defective die earns service in the coining press, coins struck from it show distinct doubling on letters, date numerals, or other design elements. Collectors love doubling that is crisp and evident to the naked eye rather than machine doubling or die deterioration marks that are more subtle. For 1982 pennies, double die errors are known and can command anything from modest premiums of $50 or more for circulated examples, to several $100s in high uncirculated grades. Some ultra-scarce double die reverse varieties are so rare that only a handful of known examples are documented, making their auction or certified sale prices significantly higher. In addition to traditional double die errors, there are occasional repunched mint mark or RPM varieties, where the Denver Mint Mark D was struck more than once onto the die in slightly different positions. On struck coins, this can produce a shadowed or double D mint mark that becomes a recognized variety among die variety specialists. While many RPM examples of 1982 D pennies trade for small premiums over common examples, particularly bold or distinct mint mark impressions can attract collector interest and add appreciable value. Collectors also pay attention to die cracks and die breaks. As dies are used repeatedly, stress can cause tiny fractures that expand over time. Coins struck on cracked dies carry raised ridges or irregular surface features where metal was forced into these cracks. While many die-crack coins represent only modest premiums, often a few dollars to a few tens of dollars larger, visually unusual cracks that intersect design elements can be more valuable because they reflect a distinct moment of mechanical wear that is visible in the coin's metal. Beyond specific die and striking errors, the 1982 penny year also has date variety differences that collectors obsess over. The large date versus small date varieties are defined by the size and spacing of the numerals making up the year. 1982. These variations occur because dies from different hubs and design adjustments were used over the course of the year's production. Some of these varieties are more common than others, and some combinations of date size and composition copper versus zinc are more desirable. For instance, a small date 1982 D penny made of copper is exceptionally rare and valuable, while the large date zinc versions are abundant and generally common. Even among collectors who focus strictly on normal date and mint combinations, some varieties in high uncirculated grades can fetch a premium simply because they are difficult to find at the top end of the grading scale. In terms of condition, coins are graded on a numeric scale from poor circulated up through mint state and proof levels. A poor circulated coin shows heavy wear and little original detail, while an uncirculated coin exhibits full mint luster, sharp strike details, and minimal contact marks. For ordinary 1982 D pennies without errors, mint state examples, especially those with clean, attractive surfaces, are worth more to collectors because they maintain the look and feel of how the coin appeared when originally struck. These premium uncirculated examples may trade for several dollars to tens of dollars depending on exact grade. Coins with significant error varieties that are also high grade can see dramatic multipliers on their value, with certified coins that display key errors often selling at auction for many times what a typical uncirculated coin would bring. Interestingly, some extremely unusual error coins such as wrong planchet strikes have been documented, with Lincoln cent dies accidentally striking planchets intended for entirely different denominations. In some cases, collectors have reported sales of error coins where a Lincoln cent design was struck on the blank of a dime or other denomination. These mule errors are exceptionally rare, and when authenticated and slabbed by professional grading services, they can command prices in the low thousands or more. A wrong planchet strike that pairs a Lincoln cent obverse with a planchet not meant for that denomination becomes a curiosity and collectible precisely because the mint never intended such coins to exist. Looking at the broader market value context, standard 1982 D Lincoln pennies without errors continue to trade at or near face value in circulation, and ordinary uncirculated examples are valued incrementally higher mainly by collectors completing date and mint sets. But once errors enter the picture, whether compositional anomalies like the rare 1982 D small date copper transitional penny, striking errors like severe off-center or broad strike examples, doubling on dies, or unusual planchet mishaps, values can rise dramatically. Auction results and recorded sales show that normal error premiums range from tens to hundreds of dollars for many types, while the most dramatic and rarest varieties have sold for multiple thousands of dollars. What really makes the 1982 Lincoln penny fascinating is not just the sheer number of coins produced, but the sheer number of variations and possible avenues for error value. You have compositional transitions, date size differences, mint mark quirks, striking irregularities, die anomalies, and rare planchet and reciprocating die errors all occurring in one calendar year. This complexity means that anyone who takes the time to examine these pennies carefully can enjoy a rich world of numismatic discovery. Whether you're weighing coins to figure out whether they are copper or zinc, looking for doubled letters with a magnifying glass, or searching for unmistakably off-center strikes with dramatic blank spaces, even common pocket change can potentially hold something extraordinary. Because of these layers of variety and potential value, collectors and hobbyists alike encourage anyone with older pennies to take a closer look at their 1982 D cents. With the right knowledge and at least a modest toolkit such as a small digital scale, magnifying glass, and reference materials, ordinary loose change can sometimes yield unexpected finds. Checking the date size, weighing the coin to determine composition, inspecting the mint mark for doubling, and looking for design misalignments are all part of the journey of hunting for valuable coins. In summary, the Liberty 1 cent 1982 D Lincoln penny reminds us that even the most modest denomination in American coinage can hide remarkable histories of mint history, manufacturing evolution, and numismatic value. While most examples are still worth 1 cent in circulation and modest premiums for higher uncirculated grades, the rare transitional copper pennies and dramatic era coins elevate this year into a legendary chapter in penny collecting. Whether you're a seasoned collector or someone just starting to look more carefully at your change, the 1982 D penny offers a compelling blend of history, human and machine imperfections, and the possibility that a humble 1 cent piece might be worth much more than you think. Imagine holding in your hand what seems like an ordinary Liberty 1 cent 1982 D Lincoln penny, a tiny copper-colored coin worth 1 cent according to the face stamped on it. Now imagine that same penny could be worth hundreds or even tens of thousands of dollars because of rare mistakes made during the minting process, mysterious mint mark quirks, and the unique transitional moment in U.S. coinage history when this coin was produced. What at first appears to be everyday spare change is actually at the center of one of the most fascinating and complex stories in modern American numismatics, and discovering what truly makes certain 1982 D Lincoln pennies valuable requires delving into the history of the coin's production, the metal composition changes, the many varieties released that year, and the specific errors, anomalies, and mint mark oddities that have pushed some specimens far above their 1 cent face value in current markets. Everyday circulating coins are worth what they state on the coin, and that is definitely true for the vast majority of 1982 D Lincoln pennies that have surfaced and changed throughout the decades. Those typical examples that show wear, smoothed down detail, and dull surfaces are still worth a single cent when used as currency. Few casual users realize that a 1982 D penny in average worn condition may only be worth a few cents to a collector even in better preserved states. Most circulated zinc examples from 1982 trade for just above face value due to collector demand for date and mint completeness in tight books or folders. In average circulated grades, typical values tend to hover around 1 cent to a few cents, and even in uncirculated condition without any special traits, these common varieties are only worth modest premiums of a few dollars depending on quality and eye appeal. These values represent the coin's worth as ordinary examples that lack any unusual characteristics beyond date and mint mark. But 1982 was no ordinary year for Lincoln cents. This was the year that the United States Mint changed the metal composition of the penny due to rising copper prices that made the traditional 95% copper, 5% zinc bronze alloy too expensive to produce. Midway through the year, the mint shifted to a primarily zinc core with just a thin copper plating, resulting in 3 metrics that varied among coins minted that year: composition, date, style, and mint mark. Specifically, the Denver Mint struck pennies both in the older bronze 95% copper and in the newer copper-plated zinc compositions, and it used both large date and small date numeral styles throughout the year's production. The combination of these factors generated 7 planned business strike varieties plus the famous transitional era variety, making 1982 one of the most complex single years in the entire history of the Lincoln cent. The typical 1982 D Lincoln penny most collectors find is the 1982 D large date zinc or 1982 D small date zinc penny, both struck in vast quantities and composed of zinc with thin copper plating. These are the coins that remain in circulation and are generally worth face value in worn grades. Even in uncirculated condition without any striking anomalies, most common zinc 1982 D pennies rarely climb above a few dollars in top collector grades. The tone of these coins tends toward the lighter red-brown of plated zinc, and while they may display attractive surfaces, their planchet base does not add intrinsic material value in the way that bronze does. The typical 1982 D Lincoln penny most collectors find is the 1982 D large date zinc or 1982 D small date zinc penny, both struck in vast quantities and composed of zinc with thin copper plating. These are the coins that remain in circulation and are generally worth face value in worn grades. Even in uncirculated condition without any striking anomalies, most common zinc 1982 D pennies rarely climb above a few dollars in top collector grades. The tone of these coins tends toward the lighter red-brown of plated zinc, and while they may display attractive surfaces, their planchet base does not add intrinsic material value in the way that bronze does. The typical 1982 D Lincoln penny most collectors find is the 1982 D large date zinc or 1982 D small date zinc penny, both struck in vast quantities and composed of zinc with thin copper plating. These are the coins that remain in circulation and are generally worth face value in worn grades. Even in uncirculated condition without any striking anomalies, most common zinc 1982D pennies rarely climb above a few dollars in top collector grades. The tone of these coins tends toward the lighter red-brown of plated zinc, and while they may display attractive surfaces, their planchet base does not add intrinsic material value in the way that bronze does. By contrast, 1982D pennies struck in bronze, the older heavy copper alloy, have a different history. These pennies typically weigh about 3.11 grams compared to about 2.5 grams for zinc varieties, and they exhibit a deeper, richer copper color characteristic of pre-1982 Lincoln cents. Among these bronze coins, the 1982D large date copper is the most commonly encountered bronze variety from the Denver Mint, and is found with some frequency in preserved collections. Although bronze itself once had metal value above face, in the modern era the melt value of copper in a single coin is still only modest, and does not drive these coins' numismatic value. However, high-grade bronze large-date 1982D pennies that have never circulated and retain original mint luster can command premiums, generally in the range of a few dollars to perhaps several tens of dollars depending on the grading system, surface quality, and collector attention. These values reflect a combination of the composition difference, collector interest in transitional coins, and condition. Then there is the legendary and extremely rare 1982D small date copper penny, the transitional era that has become one of the most sought-after modern Lincoln cent varieties. This coin was struck inadvertently on leftover bronze planchets during what should have been a period of zinc planchet production at the Denver Mint. Because it was never supposed to exist, this variety is exceedingly scarce. Only a very small handful of confirmed authentic examples have been documented by professional grading services, all bearing the combination of Denver Mint mark, small date digit style, and the heavier bronze weight. This anomaly is the most famous collectible of the 1982 Lincoln cents, and verified examples in certified high grade have sold for values ranging into the multiple tens of thousands of dollars at major auctions, with recorded sale prices reaching well above $8,000 and even into the mid-five-figure range depending on condition and certification. The rarity of this transitional piece, along with its dramatic deviation from normal production, makes it one of the iconic, era winners, in modern coin collecting. The existence of these transitional varieties means that 1982D coins cannot simply be identified by date and mint mark alone. Collectors must also examine composition and date style. The large date and small date types are distinguished by differences in the shapes and spacing of the numerals, typically a more robust, rounded look for large date and thinner, higher numerals for small date. Because copper and zinc coins can look similar to the naked eye, serious collectors often weigh their coins or use magnification tools to determine composition and date type accurately. A copper coin weighs significantly more than a zinc coin, so a digital gram scale is a useful tool for distinguishing rare transitional bronzes from common zinc examples in the field. The Mint did not publicly document all of these production changes at the time, so identifying these subtle differences remains a key part of what makes the 1982 Lincoln cent such a challenging and enjoyable puzzle for hobbyists. In addition to these planned and transitional varieties, the 1982D Lincoln penny also exhibits a panoply of error types that can add value in the eyes of collectors. Among them are double die errors, which occur during the die manufacturing process when the hub that imprints the coin's design elements into the die itself shifts between impressions. This misalignment results in coins that show visible doubling on certain design elements, such as the date numerals, the word Liberty, or even parts of Abraham Lincoln's portrait. On 1982D pennies, well-defined double-die verse varieties can be collectible, particularly strong examples in higher uncirculated grades. While many double dies are moderate in strength, the most dramatic double-die 1982D coins, especially those exhibiting clear and unambiguous doubled lettering or date numerals, have been known to attract premiums ranging from hundreds to thousands of dollars in certified high-grade examples, depending on the market and collector interest. Planchet errors like clipped planchets also occur when a blank is improperly cut from a metal strip, leaving a missing segment around the edge that persists when the coin is struck. Clipped planchets on 1982D pennies are collectible because they leave coins with unusual shapes that depart noticeably from the standard circular profile, and the size and nature of the clip affect their value. Larger, more dramatic clips that retain full date and mint mark visibility generally fetch larger premiums because they are less common and more visually intriguing than minor clips. Even errors related to mint mark impressions can factor into a coin's collectible appeal. In some cases, the mint mark on a working die may be punched more than once or slightly misaligned, producing what are called repunched mint mark RPM varieties. On 1982D pennies, an RPM can show a shadowed or double D that appears when coins struck from that die are closely examined. These varieties are popular among specialists who collect mint mark errors, and particularly well-defined RPMs in collectible grade can command premiums that exceed those of ordinary examples. Collectors also pay attention to die cracks and die breaks, which occur when dies begin to fracture under repeated use. These fractures create raised lines and irregular features on the surfaces of coins struck by the damaged dies, and while many die crack coins offer only modest value increases, large and visually distinctive die break patterns can be compelling to collectors who specialize in documenting and preserving such anomalies. Another category that occasionally appears and is one of the most dramatic in all of error coin collecting is the wrong planchet strike or mule error, in which a coin is struck on a blank intended for a completely different denomination. While examples of this occurring with 1982D pennies are extremely rare and often subject to authentication scrutiny, when they are genuine they can command exceptionally high prices because they are unexpected, visually extraordinary, and represent a congruence of two separate minting systems. Such coins have sold for tens of thousands of dollars in various error coin circles, and while they are not common, the possibility adds another layer of excitement to searching through old rolls and pocket change. From a market standpoint, values for 1982D Lincoln pennies range from 1 cent for typical circulated zinc examples all the way up to life-changing amounts for the rare transitional copper small date version. Ordinary circulated 1982D pennies without obvious errors are still worth face value and are often collected merely to complete date and mint sets rather than for intrinsic value. Even uncirculated zinc pennies without errors typically only sell for modest sums of a few dollars in high grade because abundance outweighs scarcity. The interplay of composition, date style, and mint mark varieties means that some collectors specialize in assembling complete sets of all the 1982 varieties, and strong uncirculated examples of each planned variety can command premiums because high-grade survivors are less common than worn collectible pieces. Numerical values vary widely depending on condition and variety. Normal circulated copper 1982D pennies without errors command modest premiums, while common zinc 1982D pennies in mint state may fetch a few dollars. Error coins such as double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, and clipped planchets routinely sell for anywhere from tens to hundreds of dollars based on severity and visual appeal. Transitional errors and ultra-rare varieties like the 1982D small date copper penny stand at the pinnacle, with authenticated examples selling for many thousands. The collector market continues to fluctuate, but auction results, certified sales, and dealer price guides consistently show that rare 1982D penny errors retain strong interest among numismatists and error coin hunters alike. The journey of a 1982D Lincoln penny from mere pocket change to a potential collectible treasure highlights what makes coin collecting such an engaging and sometimes rewarding pursuit. What seems like a mundane coin from a year etched into millions of circulating pennies is actually a gateway to understanding mint production processes, metal composition changes in U.S. coinage history, the role of mint marks and date styles, and the variety of mistakes that can occur even under rigorous quality controls. Whether you are a casual collector curious about the coins in your pocket or a dedicated numismatist chasing rare varieties in certified condition, the history of the 1982D Lincoln cent is a reminder that even the smallest and most humble pieces of metal can hold unexpected value, and that history, human and mechanical error, and the passage of time can converge to elevate a 1-cent coin into something far more significant. Imagine slipping your hand into a jar of loose change and pulling out a tiny copper penny that looks completely ordinary, only to discover that it might be worth far more than its 1-cent face value because of where it was struck, what mistakes slipped through the minting process, and the remarkable stories embedded in its metal. Picture an unsuspecting 2004 Lincoln penny, dated and minted during a year of transition and experimentation, turning up in a coin collection or change jar and surprising everyone around you when its rarity and error condition boost its value into the realms of serious numismatics. The ordinary can become extraordinary when you understand the history of this humble coin, how it was made, and what kinds of errors and mint mark oddities elevate a seemingly common Lincoln cent into something sought after by collectors around the world. The Lincoln cent, introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, is the longest continuously produced coin design in United States history. By 2004 it was already an iconic piece of everyday American currency, a tiny copper-colored token seen in millions of pockets and purses, yet carrying a legacy of art, history, and craftsmanship. The obverse of the coin bears the familiar profile of President Lincoln facing right, with the motto "I in God We Trust" arched above, the word liberty to the left, and the date to the right, while the reverse features the Union Shield design that was introduced in 2010. An earlier reverse style was used through 2008, but in 2004 it still bore the memorial design, with the Lincoln Memorial flanked by United States of America above and 1 cent below, and E Pluribus Unum prominently displayed above. The memorial. The mission of the coin was simple: to facilitate everyday commerce. But its journey from metal blank to collector treasure has more twists and turns than most people imagine. When discussing the value of any coin, including the 2004 Lincoln penny, it is essential to distinguish face value, the 1 cent stamped on its surface, and its worth in everyday transactions, from numismatic value, the value assigned by collectors based on condition, rarity, demand, and unique characteristics. For most 2004 Lincoln pennies found in circulation, the coin is literally worth 1 cent. These ordinary pennies were produced in enormous quantities and used in everyday commerce, often passing through thousands of hands, becoming worn, dulled, and unremarkable over time. In typical circulated grades, a 2004 penny that has been spent over the years showing wear on Lincoln's cheek, fading on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, discoloration from pocket use, is still just a penny. The general public, cashiers, and everyday users treat it as such, and most people never look beyond its face value. However, there are layers to this history that lift certain coins into a completely different sphere of value. Coin collectors are not interested in face value alone. They are collectors of history, design, manufacturing quirks, and especially errors and anomalies. When a coin departs from the expected and enters the realm of the unexpected, its value in the collector market can climb dramatically. The year 2004 may not have the same dramatic composition shifts as earlier pivot years like 1982, but it does have its own rich set of varieties and era possibilities that revolutionize how certain specimens are valued today. To understand why these coins can be valuable, we have to take a close look at how pennies are made. The process begins with the preparation of metal blanks, called planchets, which are cut from strips of metal and treated to specific thickness and weight standards. These blanks are fed into coining presses at high speed, where they are struck between an obverse die and a reverse die with tremendous pressure, imprinting the detailed design on both sides simultaneously. Ideally, every planchet is perfectly centered, the dies are correctly aligned, and the outcome is a crisp, clean, uniform coin. But in reality, the manufacturing process is subject to tiny variances in machinery behavior, human intervention, and sheer mechanical wear. Those variances can and do produce error coins that differ from standard production in ways that make them collectible and, in many cases, valuable. The mint mark on a Lincoln penny, a small letter under the date that tells you where the coin was struck, is one of the first places collectors examine. In 2004, pennies were manufactured at multiple mint facilities, including Philadelphia No Mint Mark, Denver D Mint Mark, and San Francisco S Mint Mark, typically on proof coins made for collectors. 2004 D pennies, those with the small d under the date, were struck primarily for circulation and are among the most commonly encountered. Most of these Denver minted coins were ordinary business strikes intended to be used as change. Yet even within this massive production run, rare varieties and mint mark anomalies exist. One of the most sought-after types of errors involves the mint mark itself. A properly produced die should have a clear, single mint mark impression, but sometimes errors happen during die preparation. When mint workers punch the letter D into the die to indicate Denver production, more than one impression may be applied, or the impression may be misaligned slightly. This can result in what collectors call a repunched mint mark or RPM variety, where the mint mark appears doubled, shadowed, or showing traces of an earlier punch beneath the final impression. On a 2004 D Lincoln penny exhibiting a strong repunched mint mark, the tiny D beneath the date may show evidence of doubling or overlapping, a clue that the die used to strike the coin carried multiple mint mark impressions. These are not random smudges or where they are authentic artifacts of the die production process, and they can enhance a coin's collector value. Another category of interest comes from doubled die errors. A doubled die error occurs at the earlier stage of die creation, when the master hub that contains the coin's design strikes the die steel more than once and does so slightly out of alignment. The resulting die has two overlapping sets of design elements. Coins struck from such a die bear doubled details, doubled letters, numbers, or architectural features that are exact replicas of the imperfect die. A bold doubled die on a 2004 D penny can show doubled imagery on the date, or lettering that is identifiable to the eye. Collector demand for strong double die varieties is significant, and well-preserved examples can command generous premiums above ordinary circulated coins. In some cases, a dramatic double die coin certified in high grade by a professional grading service sells on the open market for many hundreds of dollars or more, reflecting not only its rarity but also the desire among collectors to own unusual, historically meaningful pieces. Another class of error that can significantly boost value is the off-center strike. During production, planchets must be perfectly centered in the coining press so that the dies strike the design evenly on both sides of the coin. If a planchet slips, shifts, or is misfed into the press, the dies strike only part of the blank, leaving part of the design missing or shifted to one side. Off-center strikes vary widely in severity. A slight misalignment may only cause a portion of the outer rim to be missing, while an extreme off-center strike might show only half of Lincoln's profile, or a yet smaller portion of the memorial on the reverse. The degree to which the design is missing and the visibility of identifying elements such as the date and mint mark contribute greatly to the coin's value. Slight off-center coins might be worth small premiums above face value, but dramatic off-center strikes that still show the date and mint mark clearly are often highly collectible and can sell for hundreds of dollars, especially in uncirculated condition. In addition to off-center strikes, there are broad strike and clipped planchet errors, both of which are visible departures from normal coin shapes and surfaces. A broad strike error occurs when the retaining collar, the ring that holds the planchet in place between the dies, fails to secure the blank properly. The metal is allowed to spread outward further than normal before the dies fully impress the design. The result is a coin that is visually wider or more stretched, with incomplete edge definition. Broad strike pennies are uncommon and visually striking, and they attract interest from collectors who specialize in striking errors. A well-marketed broad strike 2004 D penny with strong eye appeal and full design detail can garner a premium above typical struck coins. Clipped planchet errors, by contrast, originate earlier in the production process. Planchets are punched from strips of metal, and when the punching machine overlaps or misfeeds, the resulting blank may be missing a curved section of metal. When this irregular blank is struck, the missing segment of the edge remains, creating a coin that looks as if part of its outer shape was bitten off. The size and shape of the clip determine how distinct and collectible the error is. A noticeable clipped planchet penny with a clear date and mint mark is collectible and typically worth more than its face value, though the exact premium depends on collector demand, severity of the clip, and condition. Die cracks and die breaks are another category of collectible anomalies that occur when the die begins to fracture under the stress of repeated striking. Tiny fissures in the die surface fill with metal from subsequent strikes, leaving raised lines or blobs on coins struck by that die. These raised features can occur anywhere on the coin's surface across Lincoln's coat, through the date, or on the memorial on the reverse. Some die crack varieties are more collectible than others, depending on their prominence and appeal. Collectors who specialize in die varieties document these differences, and prominent die cracks that create unusual effects can yield premiums above standard coins, though often more modest than dramatic doubled die or off-center coins. Beyond striking errors and mint mark anomalies, variations in surface condition and eye appeal play a major role in a coin's perceived value. Even without major errors, a 2004 D Lincoln penny in pristine condition, one that has never circulated and retains its original mint luster, can be worth more than the same coin that has spent years in pockets and registers. Uncirculated or mint state specimens are graded on a scale that assesses surface preservation, absence of contact marks, and visual appeal, with higher numbers indicating closer to perfect condition. A 2004 D penny graded at high mint state and certified by a professional grading service will typically fetch a higher price than the same coin in ungraded or circulated condition. Collectors often pursue high-grade examples to complete date and mint sets, and when combined with an error such as doubling or off-center strike, the value can multiply significantly. Market values for 2004 D Lincoln pennies vary widely depending on condition and variety. Ordinary circulated examples without notable errors are still worth their face value of 1 cent and are rarely worth more than a few cents to collectors completing basic sets. Uncirculated examples with original luster and no errors can trade for several dollars, particularly if they are high quality, attractively toned, and graded by a reputable service. When error types like double die, off-center strike, clipped planchet, or broad strike are present, the value range expands dramatically, often into the tens, hundreds, or even thousands of dollars, especially for extreme or rare specimens that attract intense collector interest. Professional coin grading services, such as PCGS and NGC, play a central role in establishing and maintaining market confidence in high-value coins. When a coin is submitted for grading, it is evaluated for authenticity, strike quality, surface preservation, and any errors or varieties present. It then receives a grade and variety designation and is encapsulated in a secure holder. These certified coins often command significantly higher prices in the marketplace because buyers are guaranteed the coin's condition and traits. A certified error coin with a dramatic doubling or a bold off-center strike that is slabbed and graded as a high mint state example may sell for multiples of what an uncertified or circulated version might be worth. The richness of the 2004 Lincoln Cent series comes not only from individual error possibilities, but also from the broader story of the Lincoln penny's evolution. The Lincoln Cent has existed through numerous changes in U.S. history, from economic shifts that altered metal composition, to artistic redesigns that updated reverse imagery, to modern innovations in minting technology that reduced errors.